Captain James Harper looked out over the strange planet before him. The deep blue sky stretched endlessly above, and the lush green landscape seemed almost too perfect to be real. His ship, the USS Vanguard, had just landed on Visara, a world unknown to most humans. They had received an urgent distress signal, one that promised the fate of an entire planet hanging in the balance. Harper, a seasoned diplomat, had been chosen for this mission, despite his reluctance. As he disembarked the ship, he couldn't help but notice the alien architecture that dotted the land. Tall, sweeping towers made of metal and crystal, with strange symbols carved into the sides, reached toward the heavens. The air was thick with the scent of unknown flowers, and the faint hum of the planet's energy systems buzzed in the background. Harper was met by a group of alien soldiers, their eyes glowing faintly under the shadow of their helmets. They spoke in a language that Harper couldn't understand, but they seemed eager to guide him to the royal palace. As they walked through the lush gardens, the silence between them was thick, and Harper couldn't help but feel out of place. This was not like the typical diplomatic missions he had been on. Visara was not like any world he had encountered before. When they reached the palace, Harper was escorted into a large circular room. The walls were lined with intricate tapestries, depicting the history of the Vesaran people, a story of peace, prosperity, and powerful alien beings who ruled the stars. The center of the room was empty, save for a large throne where a woman sat, her posture regal and unyielding. This was Princess Ira, the heir to the throne of Visara. She had a reputation for being fierce and stubborn, a leader who would do anything to protect her people. Her long silver hair cascaded over her shoulders like a river of light, and her piercing blue eyes locked onto Harper's the moment he entered the room. "Captain Harper," she said in perfect English, her voice smooth but commanding. "I hope your journey here was not too difficult." Harper nodded, trying to maintain his composure. "It was fine, Your Highness. I received your distress signal. What is it that you need from us?" Princess Era stood up, her long, flowing robes swirling around her as she moved. She was tall, taller than most humans, and her presence filled the room. "We need your help," she said, walking toward him. "Visara is under threat. An unknown alien force is advancing toward our planet, and we have no resources left to defend ourselves." Harper listened carefully, his mind racing. "I understand. The humans are always ready to lend a hand when needed, but why the urgency? What is it about this enemy that makes them so dangerous?" Era's gaze faltered for a moment, and Harper saw a flicker of fear in her eyes, something she quickly masked. "The enemy is unlike anything we have faced before. They are ruthless, and their technology is advanced. If we do not act soon, Visara will fall." Harper studied her, sensing her distress. He had read about the Visaran people before. They were known for their strength and their rich, long-standing culture. Yet here she was, pleading for help. It wasn't like anything he had expected. "You mentioned resources. What exactly do you need from us?" Era paused, taking a deep breath. "I need your fleet. Our soldiers are brave, but they are outmatched. If we can join forces, we may have a chance to stop them." Harper shook his head slightly. "I'm afraid that's not something I can promise right now. I need to consult with my superiors, but I can offer support in other ways. Perhaps we can help with intelligence gathering or provide medical assistance to your people." Era's face hardened. "That is not enough. I will not stand by and watch my people be wiped out because of hesitation." Her words were harsh, but Harper could hear the desperation beneath them. She wasn't just a ruler. She was a protector of her people, willing to sacrifice everything to ensure their survival. Before Harper could respond, Era raised her hand, signaling for the guards to leave the room. When the door shut behind them, she turned back to Harper, her tone changing. "I know you want to help, Captain. I can see it in your eyes. But we need more than just your words. I need to know you are committed to this." Harper frowned. "I've already offered help, Princess." What more can I do? Era stepped closer to him, her eyes narrowing. I have thought of a way for you to prove your loyalty to Visara and to me. It will not be easy, but it may be our only chance. Harper took a step back, sensing a shift in the air. What exactly do you mean? She gave him a cold smile, her eyes gleaming with something that Harper couldn't quite place. You will share a bed with me tonight, human. The words hung in the air like a thunderclap. Harper blinked, unsure if he had heard her correctly. Excuse me? Era's smile widened, but there was no humor in it. You heard me. A gesture of goodwill. A token of trust, if you will. You will sleep in my chambers tonight. We will speak of our next steps in private. Harper's mind raced. This wasn't part of the mission. This wasn't part of any diplomatic protocol he knew. I don't think that is necessary, Princess, he said, trying to keep his voice steady, but Era was unrelenting. I insist, Captain. If you are truly here to help us, then you will prove your commitment. This is the only way to show that you will not betray us. Harper's pulse quickened. He had no choice but to follow her orders, for now. He couldn't refuse and risk losing the opportunity to save millions of innocent lives. Fine, he said, his voice low but firm. I will stay. But I expect this to remain professional, Your Highness. Era's gaze softened, but only for a moment. Of course, Captain, professional. But know this will be the first of many tests. As she led him to her chambers, Harper couldn't shake the feeling that this mission would be much more complicated than he had anticipated. He had come to save a planet, but it seemed he might also be walking into a far more personal conflict with the powerful alien princess. Captain Harper's mind raced as he walked alongside Princess Era through the dimly lit hallways of the royal palace. He had agreed to stay in her chambers for the night, but the weight of her words still lingered in his mind. What had just happened? He had been thrust into an uncomfortable situation, one he didn't quite understand. The Vesserin princess was demanding his presence, but for what purpose? He couldn't deny the tension between them, but there was something else, something more dangerous, at play here. The palace was stunning, more grand than anything Harper had seen before. The walls were made of smooth, glowing stone that shimmered in the light. Strange artwork, some depicting long-forgotten battles and others showcasing serene landscapes, hung on the walls. He couldn't help but admire the craftsmanship of it all, though he didn't allow himself to become distracted. He had more pressing matters to focus on, and one of them was Era. As they reached her private quarters, Era opened the door, gesturing for him to enter. Harper hesitated for a moment but stepped inside, his boots softly echoing on the polished floors. The room was vast, dominated by large windows that overlooked the garden below. There was a large, round bed in the center of the room, draped in flowing fabrics of deep blue and silver. Harper couldn't help but notice the subtle elegance in everything, from the furniture to the soft glow of the lights that bathed the space in a calming aura. Era moved toward the bed and turned to face him. This is where we will talk, she said, her voice more serious than ever. Sit. Harper obeyed, though his mind was still spinning. What was she trying to prove by having him stay here? What did it mean? He had expected a conversation, but this was different. A part of him was still trying to rationalize her actions, but another part of him was intrigued. There was something about the princess, something beyond her beauty, that drew him in. Perhaps it was her intelligence, her determination, or her strength. But whatever it was enough to make him wonder if his feelings were clouding his judgment. Era took a seat across from him, her eyes studying him with a level of scrutiny that made Harper feel as if he were being dissected. She didn't speak for a moment, and Harper could sense the weight of her gaze. It was like she was trying to figure him out, just as he was trying to figure her out. Captain Harper, she began, breaking the silence. I know that what I have asked of you is unusual, but it is necessary. I need to know that I can trust you, Visara's future depends on it. Harper nodded, trying to keep his tone respectful. I understand, Princess, but I'm not sure I see how this helps. You've already made it clear that you need human help to fight the enemy. Why bring me into this personal matter? Ira's lips curled into a faint smile. You think this is personal? She asked softly. I assure you, this is not about me. This is about Visara. This is about trust. The kind of trust that is built through actions, not words. Harper frowned. I don't know if I can trust this method of proving trust. Then you should leave, she said, her voice cool. The door is always open, Captain. Harper's heart raced, but he didn't move. He was torn between his duty to his people and his growing curiosity about Era. There was no turning back now. He was already too far in. I'll stay, he said finally, his voice steady. But I need to know more. What exactly is going on with your people? What is this enemy you keep mentioning? Era's expression darkened as she leaned forward, her voice dropping to a near whisper. You are right to ask. The enemy we face is unlike anything we've encountered. We have seen them in battle before. They are ruthless, efficient, and their technology is far beyond ours. They came from beyond the stars, and their goal is simple: to wipe us out. They believe Visara is standing in their way. Our world's resources are the key to their victory, and they will do anything to take them. Harper listened intently. This was bigger than anything he had imagined. If Era was telling the truth, and he had no reason to doubt her, then this wasn't just a military conflict. It was a fight for survival. But why now? Harper asked. Why hasn't this happened sooner? Era's eyes flickered with a hint of something else. Because we have been complacent. We believed our power was unshakable. We had no reason to think our world would be threatened. But now we know the truth. The galaxy is not as safe as we once thought. There was a long pause, and Harper could see the burden on Era's face. It was a weight he couldn't fully understand. Not yet. She was the leader of her people, and the pressure was clearly taking its toll. The idea of losing her home, her people, was something that no one should have to endure. I'm here to help, Harper said, his voice softening. You have my word. Era looked at him, her gaze sharp, but for a brief moment he saw something else. Vulnerability. It was fleeting, but it was there. She nodded, as though acknowledging his words. Good, she said. Then we will begin our plans tomorrow. For tonight, though, I would like you to rest. Harper blinked in surprise. Rest. Era gave him a direct look. Yes, you will stay in my quarters. You will sleep here tonight, as I said. I need to know that you can handle what's coming. You've been through many battles, I'm sure, but this is different. You are not just fighting for a cause anymore. You are fighting for lives, for an entire civilization. Visara's future is now in your hands, too. Harper had expected to hear something like this, but hearing it from Era in such a calm and steady voice was unsettling. The weight of the situation suddenly felt heavier, and he was beginning to understand just how high the stakes were. But he wasn't sure about staying in her quarters. It was one thing to offer his help. It was another thing entirely to be brought into such a personal space. He wasn't sure how far this was going to go, but he had little choice. All right, he said finally, his voice low. But I want to make one thing clear, Your Highness. This is about our mission. I am not here for anything else. Era's lips curved again, but it wasn't the playful smile from earlier. It was a smile that held meaning, a knowing smile. I understand, she said, standing up. Now, let us prepare for what lies ahead. As they moved to prepare for the night, Harper's mind was filled with questions. He had promised to help Era, but the more he learned, the more complicated everything became. The princess was a leader, yes, but she was also a woman who had carried the weight of her people's survival on her shoulders for far too long. And now, it seemed, He was becoming a part of that burden. He couldn't deny that his feelings for Ira were growing, but he couldn't let them cloud his judgment. This mission was too important, too dangerous. There was no room for personal distractions. But as he lay on the bed that night, the room lit by the soft glow of the Vesseran lights, Harper couldn't help but wonder what would happen next. Would he be able to maintain his focus? Or would the undeniable pull between him and the alien princess change everything? The next day began early, as the sun rose over the horizon of Vesara. Its light cast a soft, golden glow over the planet, creating a serene atmosphere that stood in stark contrast to the tension that still hung in the air. Captain Harper stood in front of the large windows in Era's chamber, staring out at the landscape below. The quiet beauty of the world almost made him forget the stakes they were facing. Almost. He could hear Era moving behind him, her soft footsteps barely making a sound. He didn't turn to look at her. He knew she was there, and he could sense her eyes on him, studying him. There was always a silent tension between them, an unspoken understanding that neither of them knew how to navigate. He had agreed to stay in her quarters for the night, but now it felt like the distance between them had grown even greater, though they were physically close. "Captain Harper," Era said, breaking the silence, "I hope you slept well." He nodded, though the truth was he had hardly slept at all. His mind had been racing with thoughts of the mission, the enemy, and the undeniable pull he felt toward her. But he couldn't afford to be distracted. Not now. "I did, Your Highness," he replied. "But I still have questions. We need to know more about this enemy. What exactly are we dealing with?" Ira walked over to the large table in the center of the room, where a holographic map of Vesara and its surrounding systems flickered. She placed her hand on the surface, and the map expanded, showing a series of planets and stars. The alien forces that threatened Vesara were marked by red dots, moving steadily closer to their world. "This is where they came from," Era said, pointing to a distant star system on the map. "The enemy comes from a place called Erythian Reach. It is located beyond the known galaxy. No one knows much about their origins. They arrived only a few months ago, and since then, they have been systematically attacking and conquering planets, one after the other. Their technology is far superior to ours, and they have wiped out every civilization they've encountered. There are rumors of other species fighting back, but none have been successful." Harper frowned, studying the map. The enemy was closing in quickly. "What do they want? Why Vesara?" Era's expression hardened, her jaw tightening as she looked at the map. "They want our resources. Vesara is rich in minerals, energy sources, and ancient technologies. Our people have guarded these secrets for centuries, but the enemy is relentless. They believe these resources will give them the power to dominate the entire galaxy, and they will stop at nothing to take what they want." Harper could see the weight of responsibility in her eyes. This wasn't just a battle for survival. It was a fight for everything Vesara had built. The stakes were higher than he had imagined. "And your people?" Harper asked softly. "What's the plan?" Era looked at him, her eyes filled with determination. "We've already begun preparing for war. Our fleet is small, but we have been training our soldiers for this day. We have allies, but none of them are close enough to help in time. We need your fleet, Captain. The human forces could be the difference between victory and destruction." Harper thought for a moment, his mind running through the options. "I understand. But you're asking for more than just ships. You're asking for a commitment." Era nodded, her gaze never leaving his. "Yes, a commitment to the future of this planet, a commitment to the lives of my people." Harper stood silently for a moment, his heart heavy with the decision that lay before him. He had always been a man of duty, a man who made decisions based on logic and reason. But this was different. There was something about Era, her strength, her intelligence, and the vulnerability she only revealed in moments like this that made him question everything he had ever believed in. He had come to Visara to offer help. But now, he realized that his involvement went beyond simple diplomacy. He was fighting for something more than just an alliance. He was fighting for the future of a planet, for the survival of a people. And he was fighting alongside someone who had captured his heart in ways he didn't understand. "I'm in," he said, his voice steady. "We'll help you, Your Highness. We'll give you everything we can." Era's eyes softened, but only for a moment. "Thank you, Captain. I knew I could count on you." The moment was interrupted by a soft chime from the door. Ira turned, and the door slid open to reveal a Vesseran officer, his expression grave. "Princess," the officer said, bowing low, "there is news. The enemy fleet has arrived in our system." Harper's heart skipped a beat. "How far are they from the planet?" "Approximately 2 days," the officer replied. "They are moving fast. We don't have much time." Era's face went cold again, her features hardening into the regal mask she wore so well. "Prepare the fleet. We will meet them head-on." Harper nodded, understanding the urgency. "We'll be ready." As the officer left, Era turned back to him, her eyes locked on his with an intensity that made his pulse quicken. "I knew this day would come, Captain. I've spent my whole life preparing for it. But no matter how much we prepare, nothing can truly prepare us for what lies ahead." Harper stepped closer to her, his voice low. "You're not alone in this, Era. We're in this together." For a moment, Era didn't speak. She simply looked at him, her gaze searching. Then, without a word, she turned and walked toward the large doors of her chambers. "Come," she said, her voice softer now. "We have much to do." The preparations for war began immediately. Harper joined Era in the command center, where the Visaran military was already in motion. His crew was already working to integrate their technology with the Visaran systems, and Harper found himself constantly moving, coordinating strategies, and finalizing details. Era was a natural leader, her commands precise and calculated. Yet, as the hours passed, Harper could see the toll the weight of command was taking on her. She moved with purpose, but there were moments when she seemed to lose herself in thought, her gaze distant. He could tell that she was struggling, trying to balance her duties as a ruler with the fear of losing her people. At one point, during a brief break, Harper found Ira standing alone in the garden, her back to him. The sunlight caught the strands of her silver hair, giving her an almost ethereal glow. For a moment, he simply watched her, unsure of what to say. He had promised to help her, but he wasn't sure if he was helping her in the ways she needed. "Era," he called softly. She turned to face him, her eyes filled with a quiet sadness that struck him harder than he expected. "Captain, I don't know if I can do this. The weight of it all, the responsibility, it's overwhelming. I feel like I'm drowning in it." Harper stepped forward, his voice gentle. "You're not alone in this. You don't have to carry it all by yourself." Ira's lips trembled, and for the first time, she allowed herself to be vulnerable. "I know, but sometimes I feel like I've been fighting this battle alone for so long. I'm the last of my family, the last of my bloodline. If I fail, it's not just the loss of a planet. It's the end of everything." Harper stepped closer, his heart heavy with sympathy. "You're not the last of your bloodline. You have your people, and you have me." Era looked up at him, her eyes searching his face for any sign of insincerity. She found none. And for a brief moment, she allowed herself to believe him. "Thank you, Captain," she whispered. "I need you more than I ever thought I would." They stood together in the garden, a silent understanding passing between them. There was no more time for words. The enemy was coming, and they would face it together. Cliffhanger. The tension in the room grew as the first warning sirens sounded in the distance, signaling the arrival of the enemy fleet. Era and Harper knew that the battle for Vasara had begun, and nothing would be the same after this. The sirens blared throughout the palace, their wailing cry cutting through the calm of the morning. It was a sound none of the Vesseran people ever wanted to hear, a warning that the enemy fleet was nearing. Harper stood beside Princess Era, both of them staring at the holographic display in front of them, watching the incoming ships draw closer to Vasara. The atmosphere in the command center was tense, filled with officers and soldiers moving quickly, each preparing for the battle. Ahead, there was no time to waste. The enemy was almost here. Harper glanced at Era, noting the steely resolve in her eyes. She had been calm, collected, and determined in the face of everything that had happened. But now, for the first time since their arrival, he could see the weight of the moment truly affecting her. Her face was tense, her fists clenched at her sides. She was holding herself together, but Harper could tell she was fighting to maintain her composure. "Ira," he said, his voice low, "are you all right?" She didn't look at him immediately. Her gaze remained fixed on the map, her brow furrowed, in concentration. Then, after a long pause, she turned to face him, her eyes meeting his with an intensity that made his heart race. "I'm fine, Captain," she said, her voice steady, but with an underlying trace of exhaustion. "I've fought for my people for as long as I can remember. But this is different. This is not just a fight for survival. This is everything. If we lose today, there will be no tomorrow." Harper stepped closer to her, his voice gentle. "We're in this together. You don't have to face it alone." Ira's lips trembled, and for a moment Harper saw something in her eyes, a mixture of fear and vulnerability that she had kept hidden so well. "I've always carried the weight of Vasara on my shoulders. I never thought I'd have to rely on someone else. But now, I'm scared. Scared that I'll lose everything. Scared that I'll fail my people." Harper reached out, gently placing his hand on her shoulder. "You won't fail them. You've led your people with strength, courage, and wisdom. That's why I'm here. That's why we're all here." For a brief moment, Era allowed herself to lean into the comfort of his touch, her eyes closing as if she was trying to draw strength from him. But then she pulled away, standing tall again, her face hardening into the resolute leader she had always been. "We fight now, Captain, and we will fight to win." The sound of marching feet echoed through the hallways of the palace as Era and Harper made their way to the command room. The fleet had already launched, and the soldiers were preparing for the final confrontation. Vasara's defenses had been reinforced, but Harper knew it wouldn't be enough to hold off the enemy forever. Their technology was too advanced, their numbers too overwhelming. The tension in the command center was palpable. Officers barked orders, soldiers moved in and out of the room, and Harper could hear the distant hum of the planetary defense systems charging. It was as if the entire world was holding its breath, waiting for the inevitable clash. Era stood at the center of the room, her posture commanding as she watched the battle unfold on the holographic display. "Status report," she demanded, her voice cutting through the chaos. One of her officers quickly stepped forward, speaking with urgency. "Princess, the enemy fleet is in range. Their weapons are charging, our defenses are holding, but we can only last so long." Harper stepped forward, looking at the map. The enemy ships were closing in fast, their massive forms blocking out the stars. They were powerful, sleek, and deadly. But there was one thing they didn't have: the knowledge of the Vesseran home ground. Harper turned to Era, his mind working quickly. "We have a small advantage. We know the terrain better. We can use the planetary surface to our advantage, lure them into a trap." Era's eyes locked on his. "I know what you're suggesting. We use the surface defenses to strike them where they least expect it." He nodded. "Exactly. It's risky, but it's our best chance. Ira considered it for a moment. Then she made her decision. Prepare the surface fleet. We'll strike first. We'll use their arrogance against them. The battle began in full force as the enemy fleet descended upon Visara. The sky above the planet turned dark with the shadows of countless ships, their weapons firing at the planet's defenses. The ground shook as the first salvo struck the surface, sending waves of destruction across the landscape. Harper and Era stood together, watching the battle unfold. Visaran ships darted in and out of the fray, engaging the enemy with precision. The enemy retaliated, their firepower overwhelming the Visaran ships, but the Visaran fleet was relentless. They fought with everything they had, knowing that this battle would decide the fate of their world. "Now, Captain!" Era shouted, her voice filled with authority. At her command, Visaran ground forces activated hidden defense systems, unleashing a barrage of missiles from beneath the surface. The enemy fleet was caught off guard, their ships tumbling from the sky as the hidden weapons rained down upon them. Visaran ships took advantage of the chaos, launching precise attacks on the remaining enemy vessels. But the battle was far from over. The enemy quickly regrouped, launching a counterattack with even more deadly force. The sky above Visara lit up with explosions, the very air vibrating with the intensity of the fight. Harper felt his heart race as he watched the chaos unfold. Every decision, every move could mean life or death for them all. The Visaran fleet was strong, but the enemy was relentless. The battle was a brutal game of strategy and survival, and it felt as if the entire galaxy was watching. As the fight raged on, Harper's thoughts kept returning to Era. She was more than just a leader to him now. She was someone he cared for, deeply. Someone he had grown to respect and admire. He couldn't imagine the world without her, and he knew he had to do everything in his power to ensure Visara survived. The battle dragged on for hours, the conflict showing no sign of slowing. "Down!" Harper and Era moved through the command center, directing their forces, watching the battle unfold. The strain was evident on Era's face, but she never wavered. She led her people with the same strength she had shown since the beginning, determined to protect Visara at all costs. Finally, as the sun began to set, a break came. The enemy fleet, battered and broken, began to retreat. The Visaran ships pursued them, delivering the final blow that sent the remaining invaders fleeing into the void of space. The command center erupted into cheers as the news spread. They had won. Visara was safe. Harper stood beside Era, watching, as the last enemy ships vanished from the sky. Era turned to him, her expression softening for the first time in days. "We did it, Captain," she said quietly. "We actually did it." Harper nodded, his voice low. "We did. And you did it, Era. Your leadership saved your people." Era looked up at him, her eyes filled with gratitude. "I couldn't have done it without you, Captain. You've proven yourself to be more than just an ally. You're a true friend, and more than that, I think you've become something much more." Harper's heart skipped a beat. He had never expected to feel this way about her, but now, after everything they had been through, it felt undeniable. "I feel the same," he said, his voice thick with emotion. The two of them stood together, watching as the sun set over Visara, a world that had been saved by their courage, their determination, and their willingness to fight side by side. Ending. As the battle ended, Era and Harper shared a quiet moment of peace, knowing that their bond had been forged in the fires of war. Together they had secured Visara's future, and perhaps something even greater. The future was uncertain, but for the first time they knew they could face it together.